Thank you, Maker. In India, only 1 out of every 4 mobile phone subscriber have access to data in one form or the other. This amounts to only 230 million subscribers in a country with 1 billion+ people. Projects like Internet.org promise to help us bridge this digital divide. But unfortunately, Internet.org is a complete misnomer. This project by Facebook should have been called wallgarden.org. Zero-rating services or walled gardens like Internet.org cause 2 types of harms: competition harms and diversity harms. Let's start with competition harms. In each of the 12 countries where Internet.org is active today, they tie up with only one telecom operator. By not offering similar partnerships to other telecom operators, they are clearly distorting the telecom market. Particularly problematic on the telecom end of a walled garden, because telcos, unlike internet companies, are gatekeepers. Now let's move on to diversity harms. 65% of the information services on the Indian edition of Internet.org comes from 2 groups, the India Today group and the Times group. In a country where we have more than 80,000 newspapers, this is a tremendous loss of diversity. Now let me tell you how activists in India have tried to make Internet.org less evil. Internet.org was launched on Feb 10th this year as an exclusive deal with Reliance, one of our telcos, a closed ecosystem in India with only 32 services. Around March and April, when our regulator asked for comments on network neutrality, 1 million network neutrality supporters in India stood up, wrote to our regulator, and asked that zero-rating services like Internet.org be banned. On April 17th, Mark Zuckerberg wrote an op-ed in a leading Indian newspaper and argued that Internet.org is not a violation of network neutrality. That was followed by everybody in India laughing at his ridiculous argument.
You got some laughs here.
And by May 4th, hardly 2 weeks from the publication of the op-ed, Internet.org is modified. They now call it a semi-open platform. They publish transparency guidelines and technical guidelines. Unfortunately, we didn't really succeed because the existing services on Internet.org, the Indian edition of Internet.org, continue to violate, for example, the technical guidelines. If you take a single music service like Hungama, the only music service available on Internet.org, that service does not comply with the low bandwidth requirements that are mentioned in the technical guidelines. Now, there are a variety of regulatory responses one could take to deal with Internet.org. What we potentially can't afford is what Rohan Samarajiva calls Bostonian paternalism. If we can't have the whole internet, then we won't have any of it. So we cannot ban zero-rating services. This is a regulatory option that perhaps we cannot exercise in countries like India. We cannot afford forbearance either. Regulators have to act. Internet.org makes it clear that harms exist. But let's look at various forms of zero rating that might have reduced harms. Let's look at what Mozilla is doing in Bangladesh and what Mozilla is doing in Zambia. In Bangladesh, with a tie-up with Grameenphone, Mozilla offers 20 MB of data for free if a mobile subscriber agrees to watch an ad using the browser on their phone. That's an option the mobile subscriber can exercise every day. In Zambia, if you buy a particular model of a Nokia phone, and if you are an Airtel subscriber, then you get 200 MB of free data every month. In the UK, academics such as Chris Marsden and Ian Brown are calling for a FRAND type regulation. This is the second option. FRAND stands for fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms between the internet companies and telcos that are collaborating on walled gardens or zero rating services. My colleague Pranesh Prakash from my center says should also add 2 additional requirements: non-discrimination between equals, that similar services are treated equally, and non-exclusivity. So this is what the academics are currently considering. I have always called for what I dub a leaky walled garden. For example, we could have the walled garden during the day and the unrestricted internet provided during the night. Or we could have a system where it alternates every hour. Walled garden for an hour, unrestricted internet for an hour. There is already a service like this called MCent, available in Latin American and Asia-Pacific countries. It tops up your data and your airtime based on your use of other apps and applications. Some other economists in India say we must continue to protect price signaling from the consumer. They want a floor and ceiling approach for both prices and speeds, and they say we must mandate low-speed, unrestricted internet in all packages. But then some industry observers in India, a friend of mine called Rohin Dharmakumar, says I'm being very naive, and he says that the telcos will stop trying to get small amounts of money from lots of people, that is, grow internet paid usage. Instead, they will focus on getting more and more free users into the walled garden and then extract tolls from the internet companies. But my friend Alejandro Pisanti from Mexico points out that people don't get domesticated like cattle if you raise them in walled gardens. They have intelligence, they have agency. People within the walled gardens are constantly aware of what they're missing, just like students in Mexico on zero rating plans always take the opportunity to connect to free Wi-Fi and explore the unrestricted internet. Similarly, the poor in the global south will access the internet they want one way or the other. The telcos in India are now running a counter campaign to counter the impact of the 1 million letters that were sent to the regulator. They're sending an SMS to internet users saying, please give a missed call to this number if you want the free internet. I'm quite certain that 1 million internet users will give that number a missed call. As Mika says, the next phase of the network neutrality debate is going to be fought in the South, and we have to be part of this discussion because it's going to affect the internet globally. Thank you so much for this opportunity.